Hi everyone, I'm Amy. I'm a relationship mentor and I specialize in healing attachment styles so that you can have a secure and fulfilling relationship. And on today's video, I've got the lovely Agnes Vivarelli again. We had a discussion a couple of weeks ago and there was a few good points that came up, weren't there, Agnes, that we really wanted to expand on. And
yes,
today's video is going to be around sort of the Neville teaching of everyone is you pushed out, but really what it really means. And Agnes made a point in the last video. She said that because she was anxiously attached, she attracted dismissive partners. And this is what I find with most of my clients. Most of my clients are anxious, preoccupied individuals who have a dismissive avoidant partner. And we're going to go through why this is and what it means, really, because, you know, I've discussed that I had a particular client not so long ago that was in a relationship with quite a narcissistic partner. And she was really digging and really trying to find this narcissistic part of herself because she assumed, because of the teachings, that this person's narcissistic, so that must mean I am. And we're going to discuss how that isn't necessarily the case, and how the conscious mirror throws these scenarios up at you so that it triggers something in you, really, to show you what to heal.
yeah.
So if I put this into a real life example, I mean, my relationship started that way, where I was a very anxious partner. I labeled my partner as dismissive. He's a commitment phobe. He fears intimacy. He fears vulnerability and all this business. And he was dismissive avoidant. So we're going to explain how, because I was anxious preoccupied, we're going to explain how I attracted a partner that wasn't the same, basically. So what happened in my situation as an anxious preoccupied individual? So I was going into a relationship with my partner who was dismissive avoidant. And the reason why, I believe, having dug quite deep into what my attachment style is and I've done a lot of inner work and healing, a lot of shadow work. And the reason why I was attracted to that partner was because, well, for a few reasons really, but the main one was because it was a subconscious comfort zone. And my partner was very much like my father, and in that there wasn't really any emotional availability. There wasn't any sort of vulnerability or anything like that. And I was attracted to my partner because that was what my dad was like. And subconsciously, even though that wasn't what I wanted, even though I wasn't dismissive avoidant, I still found him attractive. Is that something similar to what your situation was, Agnes?
Yes, I think it was a carbon copy. My father was very introverted. He was very much a man that worked and wasn't in the home. You'd see him on weekends. He'd be in the garage building a boat. So mum was doing the kids. He was a typical man of that generation, not saying just that generation, the men are avoidant, but it was a classic male of that time. And it ended up that I went into relationships at the age of 16 looking for that male connection with my first boyfriend, who I was with for 4 years. Now, I think that I was quite needy for love at that age and really wanting that male affection. I really wanted affection. I wanted to know I was loved and I wanted affection. And that was the first dynamic of experiencing a relationship with a man that was other than my father. That wasn't, obviously, he was my first boyfriend, romantic relationship, physical relationship. So yeah, that was when I first became aware of the fear of loss, fear of abandonment, and being anxious. That's where it started, as in post-dad.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because your situation's obviously quite similar to mine, yet you were attracted to somebody who was like your father, who, and you were expecting to get your needs met through a person who was a carbon copy of what you were trying to get from your dad. So you were essentially trying to fulfill those needs and heal the relationship with your father through through another partner.
That's right. And of course, looking back, you had no idea any of that was going on. You just wanted to get out of the house and be with your boyfriend. But, you know, like you'd just be, and there was no mobile phone. So you were waiting for a phone call at home. You were waiting for weekends when you weren't at school and all these things. But that dynamic of anxiousness around love, affection, and waiting for it, you're constantly waiting for the hug, the kiss, the validation, the absence of being abandoned. Really, you're waiting for the absence of that. You're waiting for that beautiful, amazing connection that's going to make all that other stuff go away. So yeah, it's a good thing to see where it starts, how many relationships you've had that have echoed that pattern. And then there's so many ways to offload now the childhood issues so that you can become free to have a relationship, and that the relationship is not impacted by the abandonment, the fear of abandonment, the neediness, the anxiousness that is so deep in people that have the anxious attachment style, which I definitely was, and I always attracted avoidance. So you know, it's those people can be really alluring because they look confident. They look like they've got their act together. They look like they know what's going on in the world. They look street smart. They look all these things, but they've got their own childhood stuff, which I find is usually engulfment from the one parent, both parents. And that engulfment means they pick someone who's needy, but then they can't stand it. So
exactly, they're picking someone within their comfort zone, aren't they? And that's how the dynamic really starts. And we mentioned before the call, didn't we, that some of the reasons why these two opposing attachment styles would attract to each other. And although we are aiming for secure, aren't we? That's what we're aiming for. But I think, I heard somewhere, I can't think of where I heard it from, but only 30% of the population are secure.
Oh, okay.
And I personally think it's less than that, because I think a lot of people, when they are looking at what their attachment style is, I don't think people are quick to admit what their vulnerabilities are or what their fears are. So people can appear to be secure, but inside are not.
Yes.
And although an anxious attachment, yes, there are things that we do want to get rid of with the anxious attachment style, but there are so many things within both attachment styles that are really, really good qualities to have that you want to keep, because the anxious attached person wears their heart on their sleeve. They're not afraid to vocalize how they feel. They're not afraid of vulnerability. They're not afraid of going headfirst into a relationship. And the dismissive avoidant is afraid of all of these things. So when the dismissive avoidant meets an anxiously attached person, there is going to be an attraction there because they've got qualities that they don't have.
Yeah.
And vice versa, as you said, the dismissive avoidant comes across as very confident. They have it all together. They're not afraid to set boundaries. They're not afraid of being on their own. And these are characteristics. And I certainly found this. And this is why I was so attracted to my partner, because he appeared to be so confident. He appeared to be, not really afraid of being on his own. He appeared to have it together. And it was only when the relationship sort of hit the 18-month, 2-year mark where his fears were really being triggered. But there was a very, very strong attachment there, because we both had qualities that the other person saw as being very attractive, basically.
Yeah.
And it's a term, there is a term for this, and it's called the golden shadow. So we have the shadow self that we suppress, deny, and disown, but we've also got this golden shadow. So these are aspects that we wish we had. And instead of nurturing these aspects within ourselves, they are there, they're just dormant. Instead of nurturing these aspects within ourselves, we look to another person to provide those qualities for us, don't we? And it's quite, when you look into it, it is really quite intriguing. It's amazing how the mind works.
Yeah.
Is this what you sort of experienced with yours? Did you sort of feel like I'm super attracted to this person, even though they aren't really what I consciously want? Because I certainly found that.
When I first met my guy, he was confident. He had no insecurities. He was incredibly smart, like 4 degrees and a PhD smart, like it was just insane. And I'm so not, the intellectual world is a world that I've really moved in the creative worlds more so than the intellectual worlds. And I have often dated men that are creative. This one was really out of my norm, really. He was physically exactly what I wanted. He was culturally what I wanted, meaning someone who came from a culture that was big on music and dance. And he had a good relationship with his family, and he had a good lifestyle, as in he didn't have any habits that were habits that would make him, what's the word I'm looking for?
Unhealthy habits.
I think it's fallen under the table, my thought. I'll just find it. Any habits that would reduce him as a person, that would be destructive. That's the word I'm looking for. So all of those things were highly attractive to me, and still are to this day. I think he is one of the rare people that had a secure childhood, and even though they grew up poor, they grew up incredibly secure, a connection to source, a connection to each other, and had extended family around them, because that's how they are culturally. So he was secure. From the moment he came out of his mother's womb, he was secure, and he doesn't suffer from insecurity, which in the line of work that I do, and because of my own personal history, I don't know many people like that. That's like 1% of the people I've met in my 56 years of being alive. So he was a bit weird for me, because I remember thinking, he'll be insecure about something, or he'll be. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have emotions. You know, he's had deaths in his family. He feels the emotions, but he doesn't stay stuck in them. So all of those things was the qualities of a Sigma male, because that's what he is. He's a Sigma. He's not an Alpha. He doesn't need attention. He doesn't need reassurance. He doesn't need to be seen. And all those things I found really attractive. So it's like those things, because when I met him years ago, I was still coming off the back of healing my anxious stuff. And he wouldn't put up with it in me. So it forced me to spiritually mature and relationship mature, because I had it's like if I would get any type of abandonment feeling and anxious feeling in the early days of meeting him, after the honeymoon period was over, if something didn't happen in the time that would have been pre-anxiousness, let's say. If it happened before then, all well and good. If I started with, oh, this is taking a bit too long, or why isn't he done this, or why hasn't he done that, why isn't he called, why hasn't he, and I would go into feeling abandoned. If it went on for too long, I became quite punishing. And it would be this kind of stuff, and trying to hold in my anger, and sometimes for me verbally I'd be quite nasty, because if I feel abandoned, that's where you will see the sting in me. If I feel abandoned and I think you've abandoned me and I think you're responsible, which I did in those days, I would either go totally silent because I thought I don't want to be rude, so I need to implode this, or I would be he calls it, when I'm being a bit Napoleon, he says, you got Napoleonic ancestors, because I am from France. So he says, yeah, he says, I can see the Napoleon in the DNA, you know, because I would turn into that, you know. So it was like, the more he didn't put up with it, I didn't know what to do. I had to go, okay, I've dealt with inner child. I've been learning Neville. I've been working on self-love. I've been looking at who I am and where my issues come from. We know that they're dad issues. But now you only see how good you are on your self-love and your internal work and your inner child work when you get back into a relationship. So it was like, well, now I can see I'm not as stable as I think I am. Now I can see I've got another level of work to do. Now I can see that I still go into feeling rejected when rejection isn't even there, because I'm so hypersensitive to it because of childhood memories. So it's like I had to go back and do another round, and up and down like a yo-yo. When this stuff's being triggered off, whoa, you know. Now, I want to go back to that point that you mentioned about everyone as you pushed out isn't a mirror image, okay? Because I think this is really important, and I think this is one of the things that, sadly, people beat themselves with a stick with, especially the women. It's like, if I could say anything to you about everyone's you pushed out to give you some relief, it would be this. If you, like you said in the example of the woman saying that her partner was a narcissist, that means she's looking in herself for the narcissism. It's not that type of mirror image. It's like, okay, another example. Women often say he's so stubborn. Now, if a woman is saying he's so stubborn, the everyone as you pushed out is, you're probably controlling, you're probably needy, you're probably in I'm not getting enough, I want more, and you're probably in dissatisfaction. That's your everyone as you pushed out. So it's not like this is in a mirror image. It's like this. It's still in balance, but it's more of dovetailing things that go together rather than an exact copy.
Yeah, I think that's a really important piece of information, because the way I look at the conscious mirror is, say for example, say for example, if I'm in a relationship and that person has, if we use the example of the dismissive and the anxious, so according to what some of the teachings say, if I'm anxious, my partner must be anxious, or if my partner is expressing the characteristics of a dismissive person, then I must be dismissive. And I'm not saying that some of that isn't true, but it's important to understand that in the conscious mirror, there's polarities as well. It's showing you part of you. So what I personally do when something happens that's triggered some sort of feeling within me, I make that about me, but not in the way of, well, that person's this, so I must be this. It's more of, how is this making me feel, and what is this making me think about myself? What do I believe about myself?
Yeah.
And it is why that's the reason why you're bothered. It's because a core belief has been triggered.
Yes.
So if, your partner's being dismissive, if mine was like that, I would ask myself, okay, what am I making this mean about me? That I'm not important, that I don't matter, that I'm not chosen, and all the things that you say on your meditations. So it is sort of what you're making it mean about yourself. And the mirror, it's so complex, and it's it is really this is why it's a life's work, because it's so complex, and because your subconscious mind is boundless. What's the word I'm looking for? It's infinite. So these sort of things are always going to come up. You're never going to be fully healed, and you don't have to be fully healed. You're perfect how you are. You're worthy anyway, even though you're not fully healed. But when it comes to working with the subconscious mirror, it's how are you making the situation in front of you, what are you making it mean about you?
Yeah. But also in the case of your partner being dismissive, it's almost to saying, hang on a minute, if my partner's being dismissive, am I actually trying to get his attention? Am I looking for conversation right now and he's just got home from work? Sometimes people are dismissive because they're overloaded. Sometimes the people are dismissive because they've had to meet other people's needs and they need some time on their own. So sometimes the dismissiveness tells you something about them that they might need as well. So I find, my partner is really good at doing he's an overgiver by nature. So it's, I'm a giver, he's an overgiver. So he's had to learn to not overgive, and we both give to each other. So that makes for a great relationship. But he's very thoughtful and all those things. So if he's dismissive, I go, I don't go, oh, that's not, I used to do this. That's not very nice. Why is he talking to me like that? What an ass, and then that's what I used to do. Instant reaction. Whereas now I go, wonder what's going on with him. And I soften. I don't make it about me. And I say to him, look, are you okay? Do you need anything? He goes, oh, no, I just need a little bit of time on my own. Okay. See ya. I don't take it personally.
I think it's great what you've just said, actually, is if someone's being dismissive, and this is sort of what we mean by the mirror, if someone's being dismissive and, they need some time to tend to themselves and meet their own needs, the mirror is, I need to meet my own needs.
That's
isn't it? And that's,
yes.
That's what we're talking about. And, if they're feeling exhausted because they've, like you say, they've been at work all day and they do need time for themselves to tend to themselves and do some self-care, I would then think, well, okay, I need to do some self-care and I need to meet my own needs right now.
Yes. And sometimes
because otherwise you wouldn't be affected by it, would you?
That's right. That's right. We have this thing where we say, I'll message him and he just sends me a text that says, leave me. Now, in the past, I would have thought that was rude, because I know that that's a cultural thing for him. It's they shorten things, and it's not, can you please leave me? I need some time on my own. He just goes, leave me. And I go, okay. And then off I go. Whereas 10 years ago, I would have gone, God, that's so rude. How can he be like that? And I would have had this thing about it. Whereas now, when he texts me, I kind of laugh, because it's almost childlike, and it's so quick, to the point, and straight, without spending 5 minutes writing a text. So I say it to him too. Like, he'll say, well, he was trying to text me after that session I just had before you. And then I was hopping on with you, and I said, leave me. I'm hopping on an interview. I could just say, leave me. And I'd already told him this morning. He'd obviously forgotten. So it's like, you can be short and quick, and there's no offense taken. And that, I love that, no offense taken on both sides, because people aren't so triggered and and sensitive, you've worked out your dialogues between you, and it gets more comfortable, it gets more understandable. And sometimes when I see that now, I kind of giggle, because it's leave me. It's like, okay, off I go. What am I doing? And then the text will come later, why you messaged me, I feel like you've abandoned me. Now we make jokes about that now too, where are you?
Yeah.
You've abandoned me. It's like, oh, have I? And then so we laugh at, because we both know each other's childhood stuff so well, that we can, in a way, lovingly enjoy those bits now, whereas that used to be a minefield.
I've been through all that as well, and you're just still getting to know each other. And I think when we get into relationships, sometimes, particularly if you're an anxious person, you do expect the other person to have the same mannerisms as you.
Yeah.
Don't you? And it's about trying to sort of navigate and honoring that person's individuality and how they handle situations, and without trying to fix them.
Yeah.
Which I think is an anxious trait, trying to fix and control, but it's all sort of fear-based.
Yes.
It's not something that you're consciously trying to do. And I think it's a good time to touch on fears, because we discussed this briefly before the call. And I speak to a lot of people that are so terrified of their fearful thoughts because they're worried that it's going to manifest into the outside world. And I just wanted to say that it isn't as literal as that. So say, for example, you've got a fear of abandonment. And because it's in your subconscious, you will see evidence of that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be abandoned.
Mm.
And so you'll see things, you might see it on the TV, somebody's partner leaving them, or it might happen to somebody you know. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh my gosh, because I thought that means now it's going to happen. And in my experience, it's been the resistance to that fear. So instead of comforting that part of myself and really shifting into the person that is loved and is wanted and is secure, it's the resistance to that part of me that has kind of caused me to act from it. It's made it real. The resistance has made that part real, and it's sort of taken over, and I have acted in ways that would typically cause me to be abandoned.
Yeah.
And so it was just to really say to whoever's watching this, if it is that you are so afraid of these thoughts, you're afraid to think the wrong thing, don't be, because it's just a thought. The resistance to it is making it more important than what it is. The resistance is making it real. And what happens is, when we resist a thought or resist a part of ourselves that's afraid, that part that can then sort of takes over. It's got power now, and can, as I say, it can cause you to react in ways that could cause abandonment. So what I used to do is, I'll use your example of not receiving a text. I would also attribute that to abandonment. Oh my God, he's abandoned me. Oh my God, he's going to leave me. Oh my God, he's distancing himself. He's going off me. And, I would really tell a good story about that.
Yeah.
I would go to town on that, and I would try and, no, I can't think that, and really try and get it down and suppress and deny that it was there. And all it would do is make me react in a way that would A, pee him off, and B, make me appear like this needy, desperate and I was a needy and desperate person in those moments. I'm not going to deny it. I was desperate in those moments, and because of his attachment trauma, that made him push away from me even further, because in his mind he was thinking, this person's going to control me, I'm going to lose all my freedom, and I'm just going to end up being miserable if I stay with this person because I can't handle this behavior. And that started the roller coaster of on off.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I learned how to really sit with fear and sit with the part of me that was afraid and comfort it and remind it that, you know, we're not going to get left, even though this has happened before. We're not going to get left because we have so much value. We bring so much to the table in this relationship. And, you know, really, when I wasn't being neurotic, I was being a good partner. And I can laugh now, but at the time it was awful. It was so painful.
It's awful because you just go, why am I like this? I can't even think. You know, you can't eat, you can't sleep. Everything just, it's like it just turns your head inside out, and you're just in reaction mode because you don't know how to offload that stuff. And you definitely think that it's about them, and it's not.
Yes.
It looks, they're just
do.
the trigger. They're the trigger to what lies underneath. It's like once you understand that connection, then you can do more family of origin work, as they call it.
Yes. And I think a really good tip for this, I suppose, is learning how to calm your nervous system down in those moments. Get a practice that really does put some distance between you and the fearful thoughts that are coming up and the stories that you're telling yourself. Because this is the first step. Because if you're not conscious of what it is that you're thinking, or you're not conscious of what it is that you're fearing, you're not really going to go anywhere with it. But suppressing the thoughts and suppressing how you feel or what you believe is not going to help you. And it's not going to make any permanent changes either. I mean, luckily me and you have managed to make a permanent change when it comes to the fear of abandonment. And, you know, a lot of people are grappling with this, or a lot of people have still sort of got it in the background, but it comes up. And, you know, it doesn't come up for me anymore. And it's a really, really nice place to be, where you're not thinking in the back of your mind, oh my God, I'm going to get left. Because it is, you're torturing yourself over it. Just let it come up, listen to it and comfort it. And don't get too involved with it. Don't let it, you know, remind yourself that you are the one with the power. You are the one with the power. The fear isn't. And when you start to do this, automatically you will stop reacting so much. And automatically you'll start moving the needle towards being securely attached. And as you noticed with your partner who was securely attached, that kind of made you change, didn't it? And it works both ways round. So, you know, as I started to become secure, I started noticing that my partner's fears had been resolved. And, you know, he wasn't so afraid of moving in with me. He wasn't so afraid of commitment or getting married or anything like that, because my fears had been handled. And that is how the mirror works. So we didn't have the same fear. We had different fears, but when I healed mine, he healed his as well.
Yes, for sure. It's like you move together, you know, because I think the avoidant has a fear of engulfment, and they have a fear of being suffocated. So when you are no longer in that anxiousness to need to suffocate them, that builds the trust.
Absolutely. And, you know, because dismissive avoidance typically on their needs totem pole, their top ones are freedom and autonomy. Whereas your anxious, preoccupied individuals' priorities are love and affection. And, you know, subconsciously, we will try and meet those needs. It doesn't matter, you know, the subconscious mind doesn't care whether that's in a healthy way or not. I need this need met. That's the quickest way to do it. So it's about becoming aware of what your patterns are. So when you are feeling needy, ask yourself, okay, when I feel this feeling, what do I want to do when I feel this feeling? And is that action a really healthy action to take? And learning how to start meeting those needs yourself.
Yeah.
at least halfway. At
Yeah.
least halfway.
Yeah.
And that was something that I was never, ever doing. I really did make him responsible for all of my needs being met. And when he couldn't meet them, when he fell short of what my expectations were, that was what triggered it. He's not good enough for me, or
Yeah.
I'm not important enough. I'm this, and it just got so murky until I learned how to meet my own needs. Like I say, at least halfway. I mean, some needs, like for affection, for example, no, it isn't as good giving it to yourself as somebody else giving it to you, but it's not about that, is it? It's about trying to at least meet that need halfway, so you're not feeling that dissatisfaction or the emptiness or the unfulfillment. Yes, so that's really good insight, I think. So if you are feeling abandoned or you are feeling afraid, just try and learn to sit back and sit with it rather than reacting straight away or letting it get worse. And it's okay to feel needy and desperate. It's perfectly fine. Otherwise we wouldn't have the ability to feel it, would we?
Yes. Right.
But it's what you do with it that you need to sort of look at, and look at what need needs to be filled in that moment, and think about, how can I do that myself right now?
Yeah. I remember reading something that said like 80% of arguments happen because someone hasn't eaten.
Yeah. Do you know, I believe that. I believe
so do
that.
I. You're like, some people get really angry when they don't eat, or some people get really overwhelmed or whatever. And I think, just sit down, have something to eat. And then the conversation you want to have, it goes so much better after the meal.
Yeah. And I personally, when I'm hungry, I feel like really overwhelmed. Like you just said, I don't feel angry. I feel panic. Yeah. Because I don't know why that would be. And maybe my subconscious mind's panicking that I'm going to starve. Yeah, I believe that. Or sleep. Sleep's another one, isn't it? And it's all these things that can play with your hormones, your blood sugar. Yeah. Which is why self-care is really, really important when you're doing this work.
It is. I think it's that thing, the more you do this work on yourself, it's not letting yourself drop below 50%. And then you go, okay, I need to manage myself to get back up to 90, 100. If, you can, it's anywhere between 80 and 100 is good. But if you've dropped down to 0, you haven't managed yourself very well. And that's when you become anxious. That's when you become needy. That's when you become controlling. That's when you're looking for external love and all those things, because your battery and your tank has gone right down to 0. So a lot of this thing, to correct our emotion, to manage our emotions, that's probably a better word.
Yeah.
And our mental state, it's managing our own selves better, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So if you attend to those things, I mean, I rarely drop below 50 these days, because managing my energy, managing my mental state, managing my emotional state, yes, it's for me, but it's also, I'm working with people. I can't show up overwhelmed. I can't show up really needy and I haven't slept or haven't eaten or whatever. I have to make sure I manage myself. The thing is, these days, it's automatic to do it, because I hate the feeling of being 50% or under. I don't like the feeling. It feels bad. I don't like it. I know when I'm off the rails, and I instantly go, okay, I'm starting to get negative. I'm starting to complain to one of my friends in another country, because she's the one that's known me for 30 years. Oh, I need to get myself back up. How do I do that? And there's, different tools in the toolkit to do that. So it's like, the less you drop down, the less there's outbursts, the less there's anxiousness, the less there's abandonment feelings, the less there's all these things, because you have attended to the needs of the adult and the child. And that really, really, really helps in relationships, romantic relationships, I think if you can manage yourself and be really good at managing yourself and checking in with yourself, what do I need right now? What do I need right now as the day goes on? You are much more able to stay in a more optimum state and less overflow and impact onto others around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really, really good advice. And it's advice that you gave me about 5 years ago.
I'm glad you remember it, Amy. That's really funny. Well, you've obviously not only remembered it, but you put it into practice.
Yes. But like you say, it's you know, if you fall from 80%, you know, it's don't beat yourself up about it. You know, life's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Finding time for things is hard. And you know, these things happen, but as long as, like you say, it's easier to get from 50 to 80 than 0 to 80.
Or even 50 to 80 is way easier than 0 to 20. Once you're down to the 0, it's like you're running in mud. It's so hard to get the wheels turning. That's why not dropping below as best you can. Obviously, life happens. People die. You lose your job. You get a health condition. These things come up and you've got to deal with them. But it's like, remember that 0, when you go all the way down, that first 20% is tougher because you've dropped so far down, you almost can't even access the thoughts you need to be able to help yourself once you're down that far. And you usually need someone else to help you, a friend, a family member, or a professional. So I think it's that thing of watching yourself. And when you start to get depressed, get anxious, get angry, get resentful, start complaining, when all these things kick in, you go, okay, I'm derailing now. I'm derailing. This is not good for me. It's not good for my relationship. It's not good for my health. So you're more, not saying you're doing it from a place of control. You just go, I don't really like the consequences. So let me, as best I can, and it might just be go for a swim. It might be lay on the couch in the afternoon, do a beautiful meditation, and fall asleep on a day off. You know, it could be simple. It doesn't have to be things that cost money. It can be simple things. So, but those things, they're the difference between having arguments with your person and not. Managing and really managing yourself well and better as the years go by, because that's part of self-love. And that self-love is what makes you you just have more of a constant. You've got more of a presence. You've got more of a calmness. You've got more of peace about you. And the more you get into that state, it's like, it's such a pleasure to look after yourself. It's such a pleasure to be calm. It's such a pleasure to be at peace. And, you know, it's not the easiest thing to do. I mean, I was on the red bus in London yesterday, and I got on that bus and I was like about an 8.5 out of 10. By the time I got off, I was about a 4, because the stuff that goes on public transport, with people playing their phones with no headphones, people, you know, having loud conversations, people with all sorts of stuff going on, but it's intruding on your quiet. You know, it's not that people have to not talk, but it's that where you can't get people away from you because they're so close, they're talking so loud, they're on, you know, video calls with no headphones. I lose my center around stuff like that. My relationship doesn't pull me off course. That stuff is what pulls me off course these days. But that's where we all have different areas where we have to practice. And, you know, I remember Wayne Dyer saying, look at where you feel offended. Look at that in yourself. And I was thinking, I remembered yesterday Wayne Dyer's words. I get highly offended on public transport, because that level of I don't care about other people winds me up really badly. And I struggle with it. I mean, sometimes I have to get off a bus, not regularly, and hop on the next one because I haven't pre-paved enough. Now it's like I've got to pre-pave. Oh, I love getting on the buses that are quiet. I love how people just are in their own space. I love how people are considerate. I've got to try to pre-pave that, because if I walk out and go, okay, who's going to annoy the hell out of me on this bus ride? As soon as I do that, then I end up in that situation where that one person sits next to me. So, and it's everyone's me pushed out yet again, as we talked about, whether it's strangers, whether it's family, whether it's a romantic relationship, we will all get reflected back to us certain things, and it will be an opportunity to surrender, let go, and wear away your edges.
That's great. That's great advice. And shall we wrap up? It's been a long one, hasn't it? It's nearly an hour.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.
Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you in the next video.
We will. And if you've got any ideas that you would like Amy and I to discuss, let us know down below in the thread.
Brilliant. Yes, that'd be good. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.